Lucas, future U.S. Naval aviator. I'd like to tell you a little about World War II. It started in 1939 and ended in 1945. American generals. General Douglas MacArthur led the defensive and offensive in the Philippines. The defense was in 1941 to 1942, and the offensive was from 1944 to 1945. And Admiral Nimitz led the Southwest Pacific Fleet at the Battle of Midway and various other battles in the Pacific where he led the U.S. Navy to victory. Admiral Bull Halsey led the American Third Fleet at Leyte Gulf. Japanese. General Tomoyuki Yamashita led the Japanese troops in Malaya in 1941 and the Japanese forces in the Philippines in 1941 and 1942. But by 1943, the Japanese army was going downhill and was being beaten back by the Americans. But in 1944, Yamashita was given head of the 14th Army in the Philippines, where he led them to defeat. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto led the Japanese fleet up till 1943, when he was shot down over Bougainville by American P-38 fighters. Lieutenant General Suzaku Suzuki led a force of 102,000 on Mindanao, and he was going to put up token resistance before withdrawing. German generals. General Hassel von Manteuffel led the offensive in the Battle of the Bulge. General Erich von Manstein led the offensive at Stalingrad but was halted. And General Friedrich von Paulus led the defense of Stalingrad and the attack on Stalingrad, but he and most of the 6th Army were taken prisoner by the Russians. And just 2 more extra generals. General Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, 3 extra generals. General Erwin Rommel led the German forces in North Africa, German and Italian. And General Rodolfo Granzi led the Italian forces in Libya. And General Albert Kesselring, nicknamed Smiling Kesselring, led the German Luftwaffe in 1941 and the German and Italian forces in Italy in 1944. And Admiral Leda led the Grand Admiral Leda led the German Kriegsmarine, which is the German Navy in World War II. British General Bernard Montgomery led the offensive at North Africa at El Alamein, which led the 8th Army and Bernard Montgomery to victory in Europe on VE Day. Field Marshal Wavell. He led the Indian Army and some of the attacks in Africa too. And what's his name? Move on. Wingate. Lieutenant General Wingate, Major General Wingate led the British forces in Burma. Russian General Georgy Zhukov led the offensive at Stalingrad, nicknamed Operation Mercury. And he led the final drive into Berlin and a few Ukrainian fronts. General Ivan Konev also led a few Ukrainian fronts and was also one of the first generals to set foot on German soil. Russian generals, anyway. And General Vasily Chuikov led the defense of Stalingrad, where he emerged victorious. And move on. French and Vichy French. Admiral Jean Dollon led the Vichy French army in Africa. And Charles de Gaulle led the French forces in France in 1940 and was later head of the Free French until 1945, from 1940 onward. And then de Gaulle became the president of France in the 1950s. De Gaulle died in the 1970s. And Finnish generals. General Mannerheim led the German Anglo-French force in the combined German-Finnish force in the encirclement of Leningrad. And I'd like to tell you a little about my planes now. This is a Messerschmitt Bf-109, one of Germany's most common fighters. It served throughout the war with Germany. This is a Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, critical to the German Blitzkrieg. It dive-bombed Allied forces and softened up the way for German tanks. 86M-0, main Japanese fighter in World War II, but it first appeared in 1940, superior to any Allied aircraft at the time except the F-4U Corsair. And by the time the Hellcats appeared and took to the skies, the Zero was increasingly obsolete. But it served with the Japanese Army and Navy throughout the war, or the Japanese Navy throughout the war. This is a Ki-43 Oscar, an LJA fighter, very maneuverable, Imperial Japanese Army fighter. Very maneuverable, agile, and very fast. But by 1943, Allied aircraft were superior to it, and by 1945, all available Ki-43s were being used for kamikaze attacks. F-4U Corsair. This fighter was planned to replace the Hellcat if the Hellcat design failed. But the Hellcat design was successful, and the Corsair did not attain the name the main fighter in the U.S. Navy. And this plane is very famous for being a great dogfighter. This is the P-51 Mustang. Tom Cruise has one of these, and it fought in both the European and Pacific theaters. And it escorted the 8th Air Force's bombers. This aircraft first appeared in 1942 over the skies of Germany, and then went on to serve in the Pacific. And cut. Have a nice day.